Have you ever considered why God expects humility? In my younger years, I had lived proudly, regarded myself as elect or righteous. With age, I gained perspective. I began looking back and recognized my misplaced hubris for what it was, the childish perspective of an inexperienced whelp. I used to say, age does not determine wisdom, without taking into consideration that I was foolishly giving more to an argument than receiving. Even when I was right, my goal was never to change their mind, but to prove them wrong. I've since learned that such perspectives are flawed, and recognize that I was not as righteous in the eyes of God as I deemed myself to be. This reminds me of the parable, the Pharisee and the tax collector, in Luke. The Pharisee deemed himself righteous and looked down on others. He thanked God, saying, "God, I thank you that I am not like other people, extortionists, unrighteous people, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week, I give a tenth of everything I get." Meanwhile, the tax collector begged the Lord for forgiveness, accepting that he was a sinner and recognized that he could not be saved by his hand alone, but only by the true righteousness of God. Jesus goes on to say, "I tell you that this man went down to his home justified rather than the Pharisee. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted." But why does God expect submissiveness? We must consider the root of sin, pride. Pride was the first sin committed by Satan, and the sin used to tempt Adam and Eve, which brought death into the world that God had made so perfect. You could argue that through causality, pride resulted in the deaths of billions of humans throughout the course of history. To this day, humanity denies the Lord's grace and even mocks him openly. Pride is what often leads to self-destruction and the devaluation of life. The largest pitfall for most non-believers is their pride, their blatant refusal to acknowledge God's authority and law. When questioned about their position, the majority of non-believers gravitate toward evidence as their reasoning. However, when they are shown the historic authenticity of the Gospels and are forced into a corner, they often admit that they hate the idea of God telling them what they can and cannot do. In those moments, we have to help them understand that God provides the law because of how much he values our lives, and because God loves us so deeply. He wants to remove that which causes us harm. God sent his Son as the lamb to be sacrificed on the altar for the sins of man, and Jesus willingly agreed to that sacrifice and lived his life not only righteously, but as God he had authority, yet chose to serve rather than be served. If we cannot humble ourselves before the glory of God, who is not only greater physically but morally and spiritually, how can we humble ourselves before anyone? We understand that humility is conducive to the value of life. We consider it a quality trait to be admired, yet too often we fall short of humbling ourselves to one who only has our best interest at heart. Remember this, God does not expect humility for his sake, but for ours. The truth is, peace is easier to attain than we care to acknowledge. We could secure world peace this very second if every human made the conscious decision to humble themselves and consider the needs of others before their own. Jesus humbled himself before humanity, despite being Lord, and did so as the rightful leader of mankind, through example. As illustrated in the book of John, just after washing the feet of his disciples, Jesus asked them, "Do you understand what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and do so correctly, for that is what I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you too ought to wash one another's. For I have given you an example, you should do just as I have done for you."